Show today, here every Wednesday. Why don't we give a recap of what SaaS Coach is and some of the shows we're doing and what this is all about?
Yeah, so what we had done last year when we launched the show kind of in the summertime through the second half of the year, we had this weekly show and we really dove in. We were really focusing on website conversions for software companies.
Yeah.
So getting people to sign up, right? Getting them to fill out a form and take that next step. So website conversion, we really walk through kind of a step-by-step approach. So every week we talked about a different principle that you can take and you can run with. There is a guidebook that goes along with it, kind of help you through it. We talk through the concept and the methodology. So really to help you get better at it. And now this new series that we started just kind of here at the beginning of the year is focusing on retention. So you get the users in to your software. How do you keep them? Super important, right?
Super. And SaaS.coach, we've got the resources, all these episodes that we're doing for this retention show. So go into SaaS.coach, you'll get a ton of articles, knowledge, all kinds of craziness. So it's good.
Absolutely.
So we're talking about retention because it's so important to products. Our first episode of this really went into that, is what's the value of keeping customers, because if we're going to spend all this money marketing and we figured out what our cost per acquisition is, well, we want to make sure that that cost per acquisition actually reaches the lifetime customer value that we're expecting. So people are renewing every month or renewing every year, and we're getting a longer client lifetime value. The last thing that we want as a software company is to get a bunch of people in and then they just go away, and it takes that cost per acquisition and significantly increases it because you're not actually creating a longer lifetime value to the customer. So that's why this retention piece is so important. And we're going through these 10 principles. We're on number 2 right now, which is all about creating a sticky, gooey product. How do you create something sticky? And you may have heard that term before. Sticky is that we want to create a product that gets people in and it's hard to move away from. We get stuck to it. And so that's really, for me, what principle number 2 is, that we have to take some strategic thought and really think through how do we make it sticky and not just create a product that people come in and it's easy for them to walk away from.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, is that sounds great in theory, right? Make a product that's sticky. But what we want to talk about is some ways you can actually do that. I think everyone gets that you want a product people come back to, but the challenge is, how do I make that happen? What are some of the things? And so that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I think, and that's the thing is, like a lot of what we talk about is there's strategy behind this stuff and ways to try and think it through. There's some great ways that you'd sit down and talk about what are our most valuable features, using data and analytics, which we're going to talk about in a future show, to really understand what features are people using most, how much time do they spend in them, how much data have they entered into a certain one. We can really look at that data and information, but then strategically think through our customer base, our audience, their pains and challenges, their decision making, to really understand how do we shift our product to make sure that it's got those features that are sticky. And so that's what it's really about. It's kind of outside of a feature, but you had mentioned gamification earlier. That's an interesting topic. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's really powerful, right? The idea of gamification. So taking your product, your software, and putting little features in there that get the user to engage with it. So maybe it's something that's tracking their behavior, their utilization, their performance, right? We think about things like a Fitbit, right? People love to just hold themselves accountable by checking in and seeing where they're at. So there's so many ways you could do it. It's hard to talk in general terms about it, but it's really powerful. I think it's important that you have some elements there's different personality types,
Yeah.
and some people are really driven and will
Feeling like you're getting progress.
Yeah.
You know, there's I've seen in apps where there's scoring and even competition between different users.
For sure.
You know, really just that idea of it's not a flat experience of you go in and it feels like, you know, you're on your own. It's giving you some sense of how far am I getting? Am I accomplishing things? Am I almost there? It's as simple as the LinkedIn profile that says, you know, you've got a 70% complete
progress.
profile.
Yeah.
Even that is in a way gamification, because
Totally.
you know, you're really looking at your comparison to other people and what they think a full profile is. And then there's some software platforms that really take gamification to a whole different level, where it's about earning points and being able to, you know, get things back when you
Redeem
earn
those,
certain,
yeah.
and really just do it out. But that is a way to create stickiness, because, you know, if it is that true gamification, it can be like building a community, and a community that you don't want to leave. If it's just progress, you know, if we're encouraged to put information in, it is harder to walk away once we've already adopted so much of the product.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, thinking about stickiness, if you have none of that gamification, you go in, you're just randomly using it, you don't know how deep you are into being effective, you know, there is no community, it's just easier to walk away. So that's why that gamification piece can be really interesting.
To that point, in getting someone deep into a product, LinkedIn's kind of a light example of that. Like, you get to the point where it's either an all-star or expert or whatever they're using nowadays. But a lot of people like want to achieve that just because they feel that level of completion,
badging
right?
thing.
Yeah. Another one is just certifications or a certificate, right? To say that I'm a, you know, this, whatever the product is, certified, or, you know.
And you think in the B2B space, there's a different way to look at it than there might be in the B2C.
For sure.
In B2B, I love the certification idea that if you're using an accounting software, the more you progress through it, or the more that you're filling out, the kind of, you know, you're almost getting these certifications of knowledge.
Yeah, and as a user, I take that as a credential. I might go to a, you know, my next job or something and saying I'm certified in this. It's a skill that I feel like I've attained. So there's a lot of value in that. And different people will be motivated by different things. Some people want the certificate. Some people want the competition with the community, right? So mixing it up, I think, is important.
Well, and I think one of the things, so kind of moving on from gamification, that we've done with clients is really going through existing features and potential new features and really trying to evaluate the level of stickiness. Something like, you know, are they putting a lot of data into the system, and maybe they can export that and walk away with it, but the visualizations that you provide on that data are just something that they can't get anywhere else, or, you know, the way that that data is calculated and manipulated in the system to produce insights, you know, that stickiness, that if I've already put all this information in here and it's hard for me to walk away and get the same value that I am, adds to that stickiness.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, we look at usage. What's the usage of it? We've had a couple clients where the software is something where they may only use it once every 6 months or once a year. We've actually had that versus things that are daily use. If something's more often used, I do think that increases stickiness. And then really it comes down to value. What's the level of pain that you're solving and value that you're providing? You know, one of the things in software development they always talk about is, you know, making sure that you're just not creating features to create features. That's one thing that I see is, you know, as developers and product managers, we really look at it and say, we've got these great cool ideas, let's incorporate this, but we're not really evaluating, you know, how valuable it is to the user, how sticky it is, and those pieces. And so there's kind of this curve of, like, you know, product features, what's acceptable usage versus problematic usage. Like, if you have 20 features and only 5 of them are used on a regular basis, versus you have 20 features and 15 of them are, you know, you really want to look at what's that delta of usage across features, and then are you continuing to add development time, release time, training time to features that are very minimally used? And could you better kind of evaluate the value and stickiness of other features and put more effort into improving their value and stickiness moving forward? And so that's where kind of that strategy piece comes in a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really interesting concept, right? So if you're taking, let's say, very simple software that does three things, and the primary feature is something that someone only needs to access, not very often. So if you're looking at your other features, you probably want to mix something in there or push up the priority list of to be developed something that has more regularity, or something that works maybe with that main feature, that maybe it's like you said, the visualization of it, and maybe that updates regularly. It's just tying things together with something timely versus if you have something that people don't have to access with consistency or all the time.
And I think, at the end of the day, it's about making smart decisions about what you either build into the software or what you're evolving within it.
Yeah.
And are you making those decisions based off of what's cool and interesting, or what we think the users wants, or are we actually coming in and evaluating analytics data to say this is what people like and are using? Are we using customer surveys to figure that out? Are we potentially putting calls within the software that can test whether, you put a little call and say, would you be interested in this feature? Almost a survey within it. There's different ways to gather data, and then really, again, logically evaluating what are the features that provide the most value, increase stickiness because it's hard for them to walk away and do something else.
Little technical difficulty here.
Are we still
It
on?
looks like we're still live, so.
Still live, but it's showing like we're not. So maybe the Mevo's still going.
Okay.
So we'll keep going.
We'll see what
technical
happens.
difficulties. You never know what's happening. So, but yeah, I mean, I really do think it's about that strategic piece of evaluating appropriately the features, and then we can look at things like factors to evaluate when we're looking at like features is what's the cost to execute, what's the existing level of user requests. There's a great tool that I had found years ago, User Voice, that actually helped you let users suggest new features and then add points to them.
Oh, wow.
And so like if I liked a feature that someone else had submitted, I could add 4 points to it.
Cool.
And then that way the software company actually knew that could be done. What's the impact to existing features? Will it improve them? Does it take away from them? Do you have to change them significantly? What's your anticipated user usage rate? How often do you think they'll be using it? And then what's the user need to what ratio? I almost call it a pain index. Is this something that's a nice to have, or is it something that they need to have? And you really can look at pain as an index. Like, you go to the hospital, they say, are you feeling 1 to 10? Well, if you're a 1, you don't need that fix. That's a want. That's something that, that feature would be nice. But if the pain is a 10, that is something that's sticky because it's really driving them. So you can almost play that doctor role with all your features.
Yeah, if someone says it's a 1, that's not going to drive someone to return back again and again. You need it to be fairly severe, right? So using that analogy.
Yeah, I think that's a cool way to kind of look at all your features is give them a pain index. So, but that's just some of the tips that we have on how do you create a sticky product. I think at the end of the day, like I said, there's a lot of ways to do it, but you really have to evaluate each feature individually, and then as you're building out software, you really have to take your time to make sure that you're putting your resources and effort into the best places that are going to create a product that are going to get people to return. And again, I think the biggest reason, for some companies this is natural But for a lot of startups and others, it's unnatural because they want to sit there and brainstorm cool new ideas. They want to make assumptions about their audience, and you could end up with a product that, if it's not well thought out and particularly evaluated for stickiness, that it's something that doesn't keep people around.
Yeah.
And that's a failure, as we've kind of said with this whole retention thing.
For sure.
Yeah. So next week, we're going to be talking about the roadmap. So this is actually an extension of what we just talked about, but really, how do you develop a roadmap? So determining what features you want to do, what priority they should have, and in what order you want to develop and release them, and even some of the scheduling around like agile development that allows you to come up with a concept, build, release, then evaluate, build, release, and it's this constant roll. So
it could seem really overwhelming when you think about product roadmap. Where do I start? There's so many things,
Right.
so many ideas. This is where the strategy comes in, right? There's a method to the mayhem. That's what we're going to talk about.
And today's was really a build up to that, because we want to think, as we're going into this roadmap, one of the things we want to think about is stickiness.
Yeah,
and
for
we
sure.
want to evaluate that pain index for each of those features, because that's going to impact priority that will drive into the roadmap. So cool.
All right.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, go visit us at SaaS.coach and catch us here again next week.
Yeah.
Take
All
care,
right.
everybody.
Bye-bye. Hopefully that still kept coming. I'm gonna have to figure that. I wonder if maybe the Savita network keeps cutting out. Maybe I need to figure that out. Like.